A journalist once shared with me that the esteemed scientist Robert Millikan set a goal for himself in his youth, before accomplishing significant work in the future and while living under modest means. He encapsulated his desire for success and peace in a concise phrase that conveyed the sensation of having already achieved his goal. He mentally repeated this phrase over and over, until the notion of triumph and serenity fully occupied his mind, thereby eliminating other undesirable thoughts. These might not have been Dr. Millikan's exact words, but this is how I interpreted them. I enjoy an ample, steady, reliable income, in harmony with my ethics and reciprocity. I assert that everything hinges on our personal attitude. What we do not affirm as true about ourselves can hardly manifest in our lives. Dr. Millikan articulated his aspiration for glory and stability in the present tense, never stating "I will be secure," as that would have implied a lack of grandeur and certainty. Instead, he transformed his future dream into a present reality. He declared, "I am successful," referring to his ample and stable income. The future dream must become a present reality in the mind of the aspirant. We must mentally experience what we will feel when we achieve our goal, as the human spirit tends to adopt the outcomes of imagined actions as its own. Without envisioning ourselves in that situation, we remain free from its consequences. The purpose of this teaching is to elevate us to a higher state of consciousness, to stimulate the best within ourselves towards confidence and personal affirmation, since what inspires the highest in us acts as both teacher and healer. The first correction or healing always begins with arise. To grasp why this constant biblical command urging us to arise is repeatedly emphasized, we must understand that the inner universe is composed of infinite levels, and we are what we are depending on where we find ourselves on that spectrum. The higher our consciousness, the more harmoniously our world transforms. Someone who rises from prayer a better person has received a positive answer to their prayer. To change our current situation, as Millikan did, we need to ascend to a higher level of consciousness. This is achieved by affirming that we already are what we wish to be, thus adopting the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Life is a psychological drama played out through our attitudes more than our actions. There's no escape from our current situation without a radical psychological transformation. Everything hinges on our personal attitude. What we do not affirm as true about ourselves can hardly manifest in our lives. Much is said about the humble man, the quiet man, but what exactly do we mean by a quiet man? It doesn't mean to be poor or to lament, as commonly perceived. Those who see themselves as lesser have lost sight of the vision of life that the Spirit intends to transform this life into. Men should be measured not by life as they perceive it, but by men like Dr. Millikan, who, being poor and undocumented, had the courage to declare, "I possess," he said, "an ample, steady, reliable income, in harmony with my ethics and reciprocity." These are the humble men of the Gospels, the men who will inherit the earth. Any lesser self-conception diminishes the chances of inheriting it. The promise is, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." In the original, the word translated as meek is opposed to resentful or angry. It means being tamed, like a wild animal is tamed. Once the mind is tamed, it can be compared to a vine, of which it can be said, "Look at this vine. I found it as a wild tree, whose unchecked strength had swollen into irregular branches. But I pruned it, and it grew moderate in its vain expenditure of leaves and bent, as you see, into these clean clusters, to reward the hand that wisely wounded it." A humble man is a self-disciplined man. He is so disciplined that he only sees the finest, only thinks the best. He is the one who follows the advice, "Brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things." We rise to a higher level of consciousness not because we've mastered our passions, but because we've cultivated our virtues. Indeed, a serene man is one who is fully in command of his moods, which are of the most sublime nature, for he understands that maintaining a high spirit is essential if he wishes to align with the highest. I firmly believe that all individuals, much like Dr. Millikan, have the power to change the direction of their lives. I think Dr. Millikan's method of turning his desire into a present reality for himself holds significant relevance for anyone in pursuit of truth. His ultimate goal also involves being mutually beneficial, which inevitably represents the ultimate aim for all of us. It's far more feasible to envision the good of all rather than being merely self-centered in our imagination. Through our imagination, by our declarations, we can transform our world, we can change our fate. For the ambitious individual, for the self-disciplined person, such action is natural. Thus, let us all become self-disciplined individuals. Next Sunday morning, July 15th, I am privileged to give a lecture as a guest of Dr. Bale at the Fox Wilshire Theatre on Wilshire Boulevard, near La Brea. My topic for the day will be about changing your destiny, a subject close to the heart of us all. I hope you can join us on Sunday to learn how to become the self-disciplined, serene man who changes his destiny for the betterment of his fellow man. If you are observant, you will notice the swift response or echo to each of your moods in this message, and you can relate it to the circumstances of your daily life. When we are certain of the relationship between mood and circumstances in our lives, we welcome what happens to us. We know that everything we encounter is part of ourselves. In creating a new life, we must start from the beginning, with a change of mood. Every elevated mood of man is the opening of the door to a higher level for him. Let's shape our lives around an elevated mood or a community of elevated moods. Individuals, as well as communities, grow spiritually in proportion as they rise to a higher ideal. If their ideal is lower, they sink to its depths. If their ideal is lofty, they rise to unimaginable heights. We must maintain an elevated mood if we wish to work with the highest. The heights were also made to be inhabited. All forms of creative imagination involve elements of feeling. Feeling is the ferment without which no creation is possible. There is nothing wrong with our desire to transcend our current state. There would be no progress in this world if it were not for man's dissatisfaction with himself. It is natural for us to seek a more beautiful personal life. It is right that we desire greater understanding, greater health, greater security. It is said in John 16, "Hitherto have ye asked nothing in my name. Ask, and ye shall receive, that your joy may be full." A spiritual rebirth is needed for humanity, but by spiritual rebirth, I mean a true religious attitude, where each individual accepts the challenge to embody a new and higher value of themselves. A nation cannot display greater wisdom en masse than it generates in its units. For this reason, I have always preached self-help, knowing that if we passionately strive after this type of self-help, that is, embodying a new and higher concept of ourselves, then all other types of help will be at our disposal. The ideal we serve and hope to achieve is ready for a new incarnation, but unless we offer it human paternity, it is unable to be born. We must affirm that we are already what we hope to be and live as if we already are, knowing, like Dr. Millikan, that our assumption, though false to the external world, if persisted in, will harden into fact. The perfect man does not judge by appearances, he judges righteously. He sees himself and others as he wishes him and them to be. He hears what he wants to hear. He sees and hears only the good. He knows the truth, and the truth sets him free and leads him to the good. The truth will free all humanity. This is our spiritual rebirth. Character is largely the result of the direction and persistence of voluntary attention. Think truly, your thoughts will feed the world's hunger. Speak truly, every word of yours will be a fruitful seed. Live truly, your life will be a grand and noble creed.